Hello, and I am back here on the channel. It is the most earth-breaking, ground-shaking, but never media show money-taking, the man, myth, the legend, the most electrifying YouTuber in YouTube entertainment today, Lee Cole IV. So, what am I here to talk to you guys about? I did some vids in preparation for this holiday season. And I shot this video probably a little bit ago and just uploaded it. If you're watching this, probably today, along with my prediction video for Baki and into the Badlands and what I'm going to do with that. So let's get started, shall we? I went to see The Curse of La Llorona. Now, I'm only going to say that once because I pronounced it perfectly on my first go. So I'm just going to say The Curse of L because it's a mouthful and I don't feel like saying it every time I'm doing this. I am Hispanic, but most people don't know. I'm Puerto Rican, and this is a very heavily Mexican-based film. And despite popular belief between the cultures, there is a difference in the dialogue and the way it's delivered, so it's a little harder for me to say some of what they say in the film and some of the actors and actresses, because this is a very heavily into the Mexican culture. Now, I know what a lot of people are going to say. Lee, is this one of those Hollywood diversity things? No, actually, this story is very much interweaved into the Hispanic culture as a whole. This story has gone back to the Aztecs, okay? The Aztecs. And some kind of incarnation of the tale has been told throughout Spanish culture. Now, there's a difference from the Aztec version to this version, but this version is the universally binding and pretty much the same version that's been segued since, I want to say, about 20th century. So, let's dive right into this. I'm going to go into what the film is about, my pros, my cons, and then whether or not I think it's worth seeing in the movies. So, the story is about a caseworker. Her name is Ana Garcia, and she is married to a cop who was killed in the line of duty. And her daughters and son, her one daughter Samantha and her other son Chris Garcia, were both left with her. She's a single mother, and the father was a cop on the force. He dies, and she's taking care of the kids. She is a caseworker for one of the families where this tale happens to befall, and she is sucked into the world of this curse of L, as I said I'm going to say. So that's basically the bare bones. There's a little bit more to the mythology and why the curse is happening, but this is a non-spoiler, so I'm just going to give you the basics of what the movie is about. Now, there is a lot of good, but it's mostly just not even bad, just kind of standard. So let me get into why. The pros for this movie is visually, it's very well shot film. It's got very good effects. And for the most part, the acting across the board for a horror film is pretty stellar. And I've noticed this a lot in horror movies. The acting has gotten vastly leaps and bounds better than what it was when I was a kid. From being the generic, oh my goodness, we've got 5 people, they're going to die, and you don't expect much, so you don't expect good acting. But I think with films like Get Out and Us and things like that, it's really forced horror to kind of up its game in what it delivers us, because now we're expecting better. And that's where this film has a problem, but I'll get to that in a second. Also, there is a stellar cast. There's a guy named Raymond Cruz. He is one of my favorite people. If you don't know who he was Tuco in Breaking Bad. And he's been in several other different films. He's a great Hispanic actor, and he plays an out-of-the-box kind of unorthodox preacher and delivers that role very believably. He's very good. He's got a good charisma about him. Also, Tony Amadello is in this as Father Perez, and I'm going to get to this later as to why you should care about Father Perez, even though he has a 2-second role, because I will tell you what this film essentially is. So, also we have the main actress, who's also very good, very believable as a mother trying to take care of her kids. The actress's name is Linda Cardinella. She is very good actress overall. I've seen her in other films, and she's pretty good. We've got Patricia Velasquez, who is also very good in this film. She's been in a couple of movies, and it's a decent cast. The art style is good. The actors are and actresses are solid. The story is what you'd expect in a horror film, and it's both good and bad. And I'll get to the bad part, but it's got a very interesting story that I wanted to know more about, thus making this creature, this Llorona. See, I can only hit that once. Making this creature L a very interesting type of monster, because it's a mother, and what the thing is after, without giving it away, I can't tell you, but it makes it kind of compelling and you want to know more. This is a good and a bad thing, and I'll get to that when I get to my cons. Now, the other good thing is that this film, which I didn't know going in, is connected to the Conjuring universe. God, everyone has to have a universe now. Anyways, and here's the good and bad thing about that. The good thing is, like I said, Tony Amadello was in the Conjuring universe, and if you looked for him, he was in Annabelle, and he gives good subtext to explaining and introducing Raymond Cruz into the film, and his recommendation holds more weight, because then you know he's from the other Conjuring, and they don't hide this connection. They used a very loose thread by showing a flashback to the original Annabelle, to where, if you remember, he was the priest who did The Exorcist in that film. So I like that they kind of had a callback there, but it's now very loosely based in that, where the nun and Annabelle had direct ties. This one is just kind of very thinly threaded in there, and it is essentially its own movie. And by the end of it, gives no context as to why it should fit into the Conjuring universe, except for that one of the characters kind of crossed over and did their own thing. I think this gives more context to Conjuring, and all of these people that we meet in the films, we get to see that they actually, after the initial experience, deal with other things within the Conjuring universe. And someone joked they're going to do an Avengers for the Conjuring, with like all these priests get together and fight a big evil. I don't know. I'd be down to see something like that. So now, that was good. The ending was okay. It was good in the sense that I didn't expect it to go the way that it went. So I guess you could call that a plus. I really didn't see what they did at the ending coming, and that's a good and bad thing. And I'll explain why in my cons. So basically, visuals, as always, are good. The sound was good. You know, it had the the big booms and crashes and things like that, and scurrying against the roof and jumping on tables and crazy yelling and all that stuff was very clear and designed to make you jump. The acting was pretty stellar for a horror film. It had good actors that made the role believable and made me care about the family. And as always, these films always have amazing visuals. I mean, the set pieces and everything they use, they always have the visuals down pat. And even the very ending, the visuals for that are pretty stellar. It's nothing too crazy, but it's sufficient and it looks good. So, my cons now. My cons are, one, this loosely, as I said in the beginning, loosely connects to The Conjuring. So it threads this idea like it might be something more in this universe, but then doesn't really touch it. Two, the buildup is not there, and that's weird, and it's what Conjuring is suffering from. The Nun had the same problem. The Nun was a gorgeous movie. It was promoted really well. The scares were only in the trailer. This movie, the scares weren't really in the trailer. It was just kind of, they threw jump scares, but there was no build. There was no emotional build to where I got truly terrifying. It was more of, I saw it coming. It was all predictable. I knew exactly when the creature was going to jump out, when it was going to do this, when it was going to do that. And there was maybe one scene that even got me, like, my heart pattered a little bit, but I wasn't like, oh, and that's why I go to these movies. So that was one. Two, the story was sufficient, but I think, honestly, this movie would have benefited for going more into the character. Now, in the lore, and a lot of Hispanic people got upset about this, and I agree, the lore is rich, and the interpretations are rich, and make this character sympathetic, whereas they made it very generic in this film. There's not a lot of context, so you don't care one way or the other. It's just kind of like a machine. This creature is more of a vehicle for other things as opposed to being a central dangerous force. And then all the typical stuff that they do is the same as you've seen in other Conjuring movies. It's exactly the same, right down to the pulling someone through the hallway. We've seen all of this stuff before. The story is what makes these tales fresh. I personally like Annabelle. I like Annabelle Creation, and I'm looking forward to Annabelle Homecoming because it brings the tale full circle. Annabelle is an intriguing character. And whether you like or hate the films, they give a lot of context to what makes this doll the way it is. And especially Creation nails it. Like, Annabelle Creation was stellar. It was terrifying. It was downright scary with the girls. And that ending was absolutely amazing. And it tied in everything really well. And I think Annabelle Homecoming is going to do the same thing and bring it full circle into why it's the most dangerous thing in the Conjuring universe. And that's a good spinoff. The Nun was not great until I got to the ending and I saw the connection, and that made that film good. But all in all, this has nothing that makes it stand out. And I mean, it doesn't necessarily make it a bad horror film. It just doesn't fit in the Conjuring universe, and honestly, it doesn't do enough to scare you to really make it a horror film. And the story is bare bones. And that's the problem people are going to have with this film. Is it boring? No, actually. Prodigy was boring, and I hung tough with that, and that was very predictable. This is weird because you want to know what the ending is, and then you get to it, and you're kind of disappointed because you really wanted to know more about the creature and why it's doing what it's doing. They touch on it briefly to give you, just kind of some motives so you're there in the story, but they should have dove deep into more stuff that would have fleshed out the characters. There was a light political things as far as, there's a part with the main lady and she goes into the house and there's a male cop and he's like, you need me to go in there? And she's like, well, my husband wouldn't, that kind of stuff. But mostly politics stayed out of this film, which was another plus, which is why this film is such a letdown, because it wasn't that it's bad, it just kind of sits in the middle like most mediocre horror films, and it has nothing special that sets it apart, not even its connection to The Conjuring. So it's very mild, very bland, and not bad movie bland, just nothing that makes it special, nothing that makes it stand out in the sea of horror movies that we've had. And that's kind of where this film sits. So do I think you need to see it? Honestly, it would be more of a choice. If you're into movies with jump scares, it does do that effectively. But if you've seen things like The Conjuring and stuff before and you are expecting what happens, then you're not going to get scared. If you're looking for story, it's thin, so you're not going to get nothing there. I would recommend, honestly, renting this when you have nothing to do and just popping it in there and watching it for, if you are completionists like me and you want to see how it ties into the Conjuring universe, there's a couple of Easter eggs you'll notice, but beyond that, this movie has nothing that makes it distinct or different from any other film like Conjuring or Insidious or any of the other ones that we've seen, which is a shame because it had a good premise. It had a good sort of villain, a good kind of evil that's very sympathetic, and I think it touched on a couple family dynamics that could have been really good, but it was never explored. And once again, it's the case of horror movies. Either they're really shallow and mediocre, or they're terrible, or they're an us. And this is like right in that middle point. It's not bad. Film-wise, it's great. Story-wise, beginning, middle, and end. There's character development. We see the family grow. It's just missing that thing that makes it stand out in a pack of horror movies. So that's my overall thoughts. You guys can go and see it if you want to. Just don't expect the same greatness that the Conjuring universe puts out, because it's just middle of the road. And I think they need to stop with these films, because eventually they're going to wear out the charm of what Conjuring is. I think Annabelle is good. They should maybe do a Conjuring 3 to bookend it and stop. Stop making extended universes. Conjuring doesn't need an extended universe. How we got there, I don't know. But anyways, that's been my review for The Curse of La Llorona. If you like this review, please smash that like button. Hit the subscribe button if you are new to the channel and just finding me. And as always, thank you very much. And I'm just going to go and try not to have the weeping woman steal my children. I'll see you at the movies.